Welcome to the FCS Edge, where Zach McKinnell storms the field, win or lose. No, wait, that's the Catamounts. I'm Craig Haley of Stats Perform and TheAnalyst.com, along with co-host Zach McKinnell of FCS Football Central on SI. Zach, if you're not storming the field this week, are you bursting some team's bubble?
Oh man, well, what a weekend! This is such a great weekend, man. That the Western field storming thing had me so confused, Craig. Because I've said it before. I like to watch games on mute because I watch more than one game at a time, and I had no idea. I was like, I think my eyes deceived me. Did he make it? They're storming the field, and Mercer's still celebrating. I was confused and had to go turn the volume up to find out what happened. And it comes out that the stadium announcer said it was good, which was crazy. That the stadium announcer, I guess, from the angle in that stadium, it looked good. And man, you just think about the heartbreak for the Catamounts, man. But I can't wait to talk bubble today. I can't wait to recap some of these games. I'm ready to get into it.
Well, it was a great Week 11. We have a great Week 12 ahead. There's only two more full weekends of the regular season before Selection Sunday, November 23rd. And we're going to get right to it. This week, of course, in addition to that, we have two special guests in segment 2. We have Chris Grant, the Southland Conference Commissioner, Jeff Bacon, the United Athletic Conference Commissioner, Executive Director. They are together, and we're going to talk to them both. A lot of FCS playoff talk, and of course the Southland Conference. They've been the host in past years for the championship game. We'll see if they're going to bid to get it back after it's in Nashville the next 2 years. All right, let's get to it. We mentioned Western Carolina. The first two teams into the playoffs last week on automatic bids. Mercer beat Western Carolina 49-47 in this great game in the Southern Conference. In the Missouri Valley Football Conference, top-ranked North Dakota State survived at North Dakota 15-10. It was kind of great. I mean, the first two bids, we had a defensive masterpiece with North Dakota State. We had an offensive masterpiece with Mercer. Tell us what you thought of these games, Zach.
What a perfect representation of what people believe Valley football is versus Southern Conference SoCon football. When you look at the contrasting scores, I think starting with the NDSU game, Craig, I talked about this a lot last year, and people who listened to me talk all last year probably hate this saying by now. NDSU under Tim Polasek has been the best team in the country in winning in the margins, which is just little crucial things that don't always show up in the box score, crucial moments. They always seem to make the right play, and Craig, they are so good at it. And I think a lot of it has to do with Polasek. We talked to him earlier this year, and I asked him about it. It's something he instills in his team. It's something that he has built into the DNA of this program. And you see it. And I think for North Dakota, Craig, how many awkward team meetings have there been on Sundays this year where they're just looking at each other like, guys, we should be undefeated right now. We should have beat K-State. We had a chance to beat Montana. We should have beat North Dakota State. They have to be sick right now looking at all the games that have just been one or two plays away from having some big signature wins. And I really do think with the first-year head coach, a first-year starting quarterback, a ton of new pieces in key spots, Craig, they have to learn how to win. And I think the difference you saw this weekend is one team has the championship DNA and knows how to win even when they don't play their best football. The other team has just consistently been 1-2 plays short, and that's something that next year I'm very interested to see if this new staff can install in this North Dakota program. And then on the flip side, man, I'm going to say it, Craig, and we love hot takes. We call this show what we call it for a reason. There's no reason Western Carolina and Mercer, if they win the remaining, Mercer's locked, but if Western Carolina wins their remaining FCS games, you cannot tell me what you saw this weekend was not a playoff team. With Teron Dickens, that team is one of the 24 best teams in the country. I don't care what the final score says. Teron Dickens was outstanding this weekend. Western Carolina's defense actually performed pretty well against a run, who was a really good rushing attack for Mercer. And then, Craig, I really do think, I've said it for 2 weeks now, the Jerry Rice Award, you can hold the ceremony today if you wanted to, because Braden Atkinson is playing at an insane level right now. Craig, true freshman on the road, the pretty much the de facto SoCon championship game, and the kid delivered one of his best performances of the year. What a performance by both those quarterbacks. And how about Mike Jacobs, man? Another conference championship at Mercer. He is coaching at such a high level right now.
It's funny you mentioned that. That last week we had Mark Wharton on, the selection committee chairman. Ty Halpin from the NCAA was on with us. They talked about how important the eye test is, and what you just said about Western Carolina is so true. I mean, you talk about an electric player that they have at quarterback. You talk about just, you could hardly take a negative from that game in a loss when it's 49-47. And it was so close to being a made field goal, and so close to running on the field in celebration instead of just in a loss. So I agree that the eye test is just phenomenal with that team and Teron Dickens. But all right, so how that impacted the Stats Inform FCS Top 25 poll, still the top same six, no change there. North Dakota State 1, Montana State, Lehigh's 4th, Tennessee Tech is 5th, Tarleton State 6th. 4 of those 6 teams are undefeated. You also have Harvard undefeated. Real fast here, let me tell you what's left for these 5 teams. I want to see if you think they'll win out and finish the regular season undefeated. We'll start at the top. North Dakota State, number 1, 10-0. They're playing UNI and St. Thomas at home.
Lock it
Undefeated
in.
or not?
Lock it in. Write it in pen. Put it in stone. NDSU will be 12-0 this year.
All right, the questions will get harder because that was an easy one. Montana's 10-0, number 2, at Portland State, and then they host the Bobcats, Montana State, in the Brawl of the Wild. Are they going to finish undefeated?
No, I would predict no right now. I think Montana State is arguably playing some of the best football in the country. And if I had to pick that game today, Craig, I would lean the Bobcats. So I'm going to go 11-1 for Montana.
Okay. Lehigh, 10-0 in the Patriot League, number 4, at Colgate, at Lafayette, their rival, the most played series in college football awaits. Will they get 2 road wins?
This might be the hardest one out of all of them, Craig, just because I think Lafayette's playing really good football right now. They are still unbeaten in Patriot League play. That's a rivalry game on the road. That's the trap game for Lehigh, but I'm going to lean here and say Lehigh finishes 12-0. I think the defense is the difference.
Okay. Tennessee Tech, here's an interesting one, 10-0. Going to Kentucky, an FBS game late in the season, and then hosting UT Martin, maybe playing for the auto bid in that one. Are the Golden Eagles going 12-0?
No, they'll probably finish undefeated against FCS. But listen, Kentucky, since they moved off of Zach Calzada, Cutter Bowley's been playing really, really well at quarterback for them. I think Kentucky's got that one. But Craig, if they pull that one off, I know I know the strength of schedule debate and everything. If they're 12-0 with a win over Kentucky in the SEC, I'm gonna be very curious to see what the ceiling is on them in terms of seeding from the playoff committee.
That is a phenomenal question. Good one. All right, Harvard, all-time high in the ranks. I think they're 7 now. They're 8-0. They're hosting Penn, and then they play their arch rival at Yale. Are they going 10-0?
Ooh, another tough one because I think they'll get Penn. Penn's kind of fallen off in recent weeks. They haven't played their best, but that Yale team's clicking right now. And Craig, we have seen. Listen, you've covered the FCS a little bit longer than even I have. That Yale, that Harvard Yale game is different, especially when the stakes are high. Anybody can be beaten any given weekend. I'm a lean Harvard getting 10-0, but at 9-1, I still think they would have a really good shot at getting that at large bid.
It's phenomenal that we could have, multiple undefeated teams at the end of the regular season, and it'll probably happen. I mean, we know the Bison are probably a lock at this point, so we'll see. All right, of course, the big topic at this time of the year, playoffs, getting into the postseason. The SWAC and MEAC obviously are playing to get to the Celebration Bowl. Let's just talk some of the scenarios out there and some of the conferences. Which ones fascinate you the most, Zach? Which ones will lead to chaos? Our favorite word on the FCS Edge.
I think the biggest chaos, or the 2 biggest chaos scenarios, are the OVC Big South this year. What happens if UT Martin wins out and they steal the auto bid? And obviously Tennessee Tech at, what would that be, 10-2? they would get in at large bid, right, Craig? I think there's still a lock right now to get into the postseason. What does that do for a potential 7-win South Dakota State team, a potential 7-win South Dakota team if it comes to that, or some of these Valley teams on the bubble, a Northern Arizona on the bubble at 8 wins? Because the bubble's already going to be tight with the Ivy League joining. What happens if the bubble gets even tighter if a UT Martin gets in? But also, too, you combine that with, we just talked about it, what if Lafayette wins out? They steal the auto bid, and you get an 11-1 Lehigh on the bubble now. Craig, that could be 2 bubble spots taking out of there, and we're looking at some of these first 4 in projections. Myself, you, Sam, we all do these bracketology predictions. Craig, we could have South Dakota State on the bubble, and they could be one of the last 4 out, and now we only got 2 spots instead of 4 in. That's some tough decisions going on there, and then I think the ultimate one, too, is the Ivy League. We don't know what they look like, Craig. We don't know how the committee really views them. They're very high on Harvard right now. Obviously, they were in their top 10. What happens if Harvard finishes 9-1? Yale gets the auto bid. Does a 9-1 Harvard get in? Because everyone, and I was one of the people early in the season. I actually had someone from the Ivy League talk to me about it and explain it like, yes, we only played 10 games, but a lot of these other schools play an FBS game. Some of these teams play a Division II opponent. You're not really comparing 10 games to 12 games. You're really comparing 10 Division I FCS games to possibly 10 or 11 FCS Division I games for a lot of these programs. So the comparison really isn't 10 to 12. It's 10 to 10 or 10 to 11. And I think that changes the conversation. I think a 9-1 Harvard, Craig, would be in as an at-large bid right now, especially with how the committee has already put them in the top 10 right now.
I think a 9-1 Harvard team is definitely in. 8-2 might be questionable. They probably should beat Penn at home, but as long as Yale wins this weekend at Princeton, they'll be playing for the auto bid. That's the interesting thing. I mean, fans clamored for years. We want the Ivy League in. Why are they not in? Well, now they're in. There'd be a lot of upset people around the country if suddenly the Ivy League gets 2 bids because Harvard has to go in on an at-large, and it would be crazy how to have that happen. And it isn't even necessarily the best of years in the Ivy League. I mean, Harvard, yes, but there's been better years the depth-wide. But hey, if Yale gets the auto bid, you have to factor in Harvard maybe for an at-large, and that would be 2 spots, out of the field of 24. These races are fascinating because you can project out, but as you mentioned, UT Martin, Lafayette, Yale. If that domino falls, it changes a lot. South Dakota State, I think that's the fascinating one because they're 7-3, 3 straight losses. The 2 teams they're playing next are ranked above them. Illinois State, North Dakota. There's no way the committee can validate putting in a 7-5 South Dakota State team, even if they'd beat some of the teams in the field. You can't put a team in with 5 straight losses going into Selection Sunday. But I do think that right now the Missouri Valley is a 6-bid league. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would think so because there's going to be a team left out there, and I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I thought it was going to be South Dakota. It's actually looking like it's going to be Southern Illinois is going to be the team that's probably on the outside looking in, just because not only are they going to probably be right there at 7 wins, they have that non-D1 game, and I think they're going to get punished for it on the bubble, and I think that's really going to hurt them. You can't go play, what was it, Thomas More week 1, I think is who their opponent was. They're going to be the team left out, but I think when you look at how the South Dakota's kind of turned the corner here and started to win some games, I think if South Dakota can win this weekend, they're probably a lock in at what would that be, 8-4, even if they lose the last week of the season. I think the one that I'm looking at strongly is South Dakota State, though, because if they're not going to get 6 in, I think that's going to be the team that gets left out. Because I think you look at Youngstown, they get 2 super easy games to end the year. Youngstown should win out, and they're probably going to be in. North Dakota State's a lock right now. I think North Dakota, as long as they win one of their last 2, should be in. You go through all these things. It looks like if South Dakota State slips up this weekend, Craig, you look at that trip to North Dakota in the Alaris Center with a team who's might be fighting for their bid too. That's a tough matchup. And then also on the flip side, can the committee really just keep saying, man, well, if Chase Mason comes back, if he doesn't come back in one of these last 2 weeks, I've said the committee needs to play this fair and say he's not coming back. Because if he was able to come back, he would have been dressed out. There would have been more reports. I understand, and I've supported Dan Jackson not telling his opponents whether he's going to play. But for the playoff committee, if he hasn't played in 5 weeks, I can't just say we're putting you in on the off chance that he plays. He's got to play before the postseason. Or if I'm the committee, you have a 7-5 team, 5 straight losses, don't have their starting quarterback. I'm going to put in a Western Carolina 8-4. I'm going to put in another bubble team here over them who's been playing better football to end the season.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the bubble has exploded in the last week or so. 7-5 is only going to cut it for an Abilene Christian with all their top 25 wins, or a Missouri Valley Conference. There's just too many teams. I mean, the CAA could have a bunch of 8-4 teams if it falls correctly, and that's beyond the big three of Villanova, Monmouth, and Rhode Island. So we have 2 teams in, Mercer and North Dakota State. There are 2 that would get in for sure just by winning this week. The NEC, Central Connecticut State could be a second straight appearance, and all they have to do is beat Duquesne. But they still even have, luxury of winning next week, shouldn't they win this week of getting in. Lamar versus Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin will get the bid because of if they win, even if they wound up tied for the league title, they would still win on tiebreakers. So definitely those 2. Any other scenario out there conference-wise that really stands out to you?
I'm going to be curious. You talk about 7-win teams getting in. I do wonder how the committee is going to look at Southern Utah. I know that might sound crazy to some fans, but you look at how tough their schedule was early. They're on a roll right now. They have a win over Abilene Christian. They knocked off what was it, Austin P, I believe, too. So 2 quality wins there. I do wonder if the committee looks at how they're playing and considers them. I still think I would put them in the first 4 out. But if there is some chaos on the bubble, Craig, would you put a red hot Southern Utah team in over a 7-5 South Dakota State team with 5 straight losses? If it came down to that, would you take the hotter team? I think that would be something I'm curious to see. And then, like you said, I really, really hope the committee watch this weekend and Western Carolina doesn't get just left out on the outside looking in, because I think that would be one of the biggest travesties in terms of, do we have the 24 best teams? And that's what the committee says it all the time. We want the 24 best teams. I don't think if you leave Western Carolina out, you can say that.
Well, last week we had the selection committee on. With them not being here this week, we have the next best person to ask about Southern Utah, Jeff Bacon, the UAC executive director, Chris Grant from the Southland. He's got 3 top contenders to get into the field. They are going to join us next in our segment 2, and we're going to have a great interview with them. But as we go to break for the FCS Edge, we're going to take a look at the Stats Reform Week 11 National Players and Teams of the Week. This is the FCS Edge. Welcome back to the FCS Edge. Zach and I are pleased to be joined by 2 special guests today. Chris Grant, the Southland Conference Commissioner. Jeff Bacon, the United Athletic Conference Executive Director, also the ASUN Commissioner. Gentlemen, we thank you for joining us today. Let's get right to it. Great time of the year for both of you. Your conferences have multiple playoff candidates. Can you talk about that excitement and just some of those teams in the mix here going towards the playoffs?
Dude, it's what we do it for, right? Providing a platform for our student athletes to succeed nationally. And, and truly it's been remarkable what we've been able to accomplish this year in the Southland. Obviously had great opponents and a lot of good matchups this year with the United, but amongst others too in the FCS. I think both of our conferences represent leagues that aren't scared to play anyone, anywhere, right? We got outside our footprint and try to build great resumes to go into postseason. So we hope the committee continues to watch, right? I know a lot of it is built off metrics, we hope, right? But then again, the same side that they're watching games too. So I know our league's excited between Stephen F. Austin, Lamar. We actually have a true championship game coming into it this weekend. So a lot of ranked matchup for the Southland. But at the same point in time, Southeastern has also built a great resume and what they're doing. That was a great game this past week, being down there in Beaumont. So and then I can't fail to mention what UTRGV has accomplished overall in their first year of Division I football. The excitement with the crowds and what they've built and the challenging conference schedule and what they've been able to do non-conference too with a win over the SWAC was very impressive to me. So a good year for the Southland and better than some of our previous years. And we hope it pays off here in the long run.
Yeah, it's really good evidence of what's happening here in the South and FCS football. I mean, you'd expect and hope us to collectively, between our two conferences in particular, have some of, if not the best football in the South and the Southeast. And like Chris has said, now you're seeing our schools step up to the plate competitively. We've got a potential, national championship contender in our league this year in Tarleton State, who's just been outstanding. We're looking at being a multi-bid league for the second year in a row. Abilene Christians just put together a tremendous resume. And like Chris said, our schools between both leagues, they go out and they fight and they compete and they schedule and they win. And I think we expect that to be rewarded and recognized when it comes time for selections. The fact that our folks will go out and take on folks when Tarleton goes on the road and knocks off a defending American Conference champion in Army at Army. We've knocked off Middle Tennessee State this year. We have 2 FBS wins in our league. And that should be recognized, that we go out and compete against each other. Our leagues compete against each other at a really high level as well. Our schools have done a great job of finding those matchups, and I think that helps both the Southland and the United.
All right.
You guys talk about competing nationally and wanted to compete for national titles. I heard you mention Tarleton, a national title contender this year. Obviously, the past few national championships have been some sort of combination of Montana State, the 2 Dakota State schools. It's easy to say that other schools are closing the gap. For you guys and your schools and your respective conferences, what have you guys seen with schools trying to close the gap nationally to become national title contenders?
Yeah, I think, investment first and foremost, investment in the sport, investment in the student athletes, investment in facilities and infrastructure, in coaching. We have tremendous coaches in both of our conferences, obviously. So first of all, the investment to try to compete with those folks are there. Those guys, Montana's going to be Montana and North Dakota State's going to be North Dakota State. We don't want to be them. I think our folks want to be themselves. And when you look at the state of Texas in particular, when you look at Kentucky and Tennessee in our league, and Louisiana and Chris's league, you've got just a great foundation of fan bases that are passionate about it. You got great recruiting territory to find incredible student athletes. So when you invest and you're sitting in the South and you've got great football all around you, it creates an expectation. I think there's expectations on all of our campuses that we should be competing at that level, and it's going to take that investment to make sure it gets done, and we're starting to see the rewards of that.
Yeah, I'll double down on the investment and the student athlete experience, most importantly, and for what we've done in both of our leagues, trying to begin hosting more of those, high profile matchups here in this region. Like, look, we're in the most talent rich region that there is here in the South. For us speaking independently, Texas, Louisiana, stretching all the way to Georgia and Florida, for Jeff, and say going up to Tennessee, it's amazing, right? And don't let me forget Alabama's too, and going into that. And so, but I don't want you to forget, it's a national championship trophy behind us for a reason here right now. They were members of both our leagues, like a hybrid as we both came into this. But, look, we were fortunate enough to win a national championship in this last, 5 years, and coming to that. And look, we're ready to bring it back. But our schools have definitely realized that, hey, it's more of a balanced league now. And I tell you, both leagues are resenting, like, no, we don't have cupcake games in any of our leagues. And, we saw what West Georgia has come in and done to some of our schools. And same thing, we played Eastern Kentucky. And, of course, we have the Tarleton and ACU matchups. Heck, ACU, they beat SFA, but then UIW, who, some people may have forgotten about, they're still UIW. And, that talent hasn't really blended together as we expected throughout the year, but it's been competitive matchups. And so just don't want the committee and the fans out there to take any of our leagues for granted, right? The brands are still there and they're strong. Our schools are investing. We just need to get some of those Missouri Valley, Big Sky, CAA, SoCon, and Michael Cross over there. Look, we're talking, we want more of those games in the South. And I think I emphasized this on another podcast. We got to play more of those games, right? And we have to balance it out. And I know it's good for them to get the home games too. But at the same point in time, we want to see that commitment coming to the South and seeing FCS football really benefit as a whole, holistically across the country from that.
Commissioner Grant, you allude to Sam Houston State, winning the national title in the spring 2021 season, beating South Dakota State. Terrific game. The Southland was the host for 15 years. Obviously, this year the renovations at Toyota Stadium have moved the game to Nashville, and for the next 2 years. Can you kind of update us on the renovations at Toyota Stadium and just the Southland Conferences and the city of Frisco's desire to bid for the game again?
Yeah, we want it back, right? Let's start with that, definitely. But also want to do our part in ensuring that Nashville has everything they need to be successful for these next 2 years. But we're coming back for it once that bid process opens up. And again, it's really what FC Dallas and a commitment from the Hunt family into FCS football, what they want to do for that stadium, providing a better fan experience, which leads to a better student athlete experience and what's best for this, Frisco, Dallas, North Texas region. And so we will be aggressive in the bid package going about it again. But, look, I'm also in the same realm of I want to do what's best for FCS football. So we're talking about the future of that. What is best? How do we create a better regional setup? Currently we're planning on, the weekend after Thanksgiving. Is that the best experience for our student athletes at filling stadiums? So these are all conversations that we're having in the commissioner room. And while you all seen some of that static, coming through D1 Ticker and other sources while we're looking at other opportunities. But, we do also want to partner with the NCAA and make sure we're being good partners and moving this brand forward. We just want to put a vision to it. And right, what does it look like in the next decade? Knowing that, look, the college football playoff is we can't now say we're the only playoff in town and what it looks like. Like, we got to be better in what we're doing and put a plan in place. So I know our partners here in Frisco are willing to look at that and collectively come to what's best for FCS. And hopefully in the commissioner room, we can get to that same strategy. Anything to add?
Well said. Yeah, I mean, the championship is, I think what's nice this year moving to Nashville is just the energy that's being created around it and putting that event out into the marketplace and seeing folks step up and want that to be a part of their community. Just like Chris is saying, he wants it back here in Frisco. I mean, it's a valuable asset. We recognize it's a valuable asset. It's obviously the pinnacle of what we do at this level. And so to drive a little energy this year and move it around a little bit and find out that, I think this is something that has a lot of value in markets, and we can take advantage of that moving forward.
Yes.
Conference realignment has been madness the past about 5 years. I mean, it feels like every year, every few months, you hear different rumors, things like that. How are each of your conferences approaching realignment? And just obviously, you can't get into specific schools and things like that, but what are some qualities in an institution that you look for when looking to see if maybe a new member would be the right fit for your respective conferences?
Touch first.
Sure. So we in our league, it's a little unique right now. As you guys probably know, we've built a different model where we've taken two conferences, the Atlantic Sun and what will moving forward be known as the United Athletic Conference, or the former WAC, and we've put them together under one cohesive umbrella where we think we can drive a lot of value to the members of both conferences by generating new revenues, finding ways to save cost, allowing our schools to continue that investment in athletics that we talked about a little while ago. It'll provide us a number of scheduling opportunities across the board for both conferences and our schools and our campuses. As Chris and I know, it's really hard to get games in some of our basketball gyms this year in particular. And so it's a partnership opportunity for those two leagues. And as we think about our membership, we've got 16 schools across two conferences that really look and feel very similar. I mean, our geography is fairly wide. We certainly have a mix of publics and privates. We have some really small schools. We have some really huge schools. I get all the diversity there, but what they have in common is that commitment to Division I athletics, that interest in investing and getting better and supporting their student athletes and providing an elite experience. And so whether you're a small private school in a major market like Queen's University of Charlotte, or a really large campus like Eastern Kentucky and Richmond, Kentucky, who just has an explosive enrollment trajectory at the moment. they don't look the same on paper, but they are the same in terms of their MO and how they're trying to compete at this level. So as we think about it in our leagues, it's really about, if we're going to bring anyone into that mix, they ought to do the same things.
Yeah.
And they ought to bring not only value to the rest of the group, but they really have to show a commitment to wanting to be a part of Division I moving forward and increasing that investment in our student athletes.
Jeff nailed it. I mean, and for us, this doubling down, it's been that regional identity, right? And knowing that we want to keep kids in the classroom, right? That's the one thing I don't think any of our camps have gotten away from, is that student athlete mission. You're here to graduate, right? And the sports is a part of that, and and being associated. But we want to see you walk across that stage, get a degree. And I love my board. I like to say Jeff's board has prioritized that, and the rest of FCS, and that, hey, you're not just coming to get a payout and then leaving and go to the next school, right? Those situations still happen, but at the same point in time, we're invested in their futures, knowing they're better off with a degree than they're not. And so with all that said, that regional fit that we've been able to build here in the Southland, coining that gas tank league, is talking to a few student athlete advisory committee members over the last week, and what their experience has been thus far. And they do love being off their airplanes, right, when it comes to matchups. And I think we're talking about more day to day as commissioners, how do we create even more regional opportunities, right? What are we doing with our conference schedules? What are the non-conference priorities? Not a lot of our other sports being one big leagues. Like, yeah, we would love for them to be too big, but let's be realistic in our approach. And how can we keep those kids and the student athletes in the classroom, at the same time save our school some money and make sure they're reinvesting those dollars into that student athlete experience and it being great.
Zach and I are visiting with Chris Grant, the Southland Conference Commissioner, Jeff Bacon, the United Athletic Conference Executive Director and ASUN Commissioner. Commissioner Grant, you kind of alluded to the FBS has even caught up, gone to a playoff now, 12 schools as opposed to just, say, 4.
Yes.
The FCS now has 129 programs. The Ivy League joining in the playoffs, 11 at automatic bids, 13 at large bids for a 2014 field. Is 24 teams still the right number for the both of you?
Well, look, I'm going to go ahead and start the rumor now. I would love expansion, right? Because I think we're going to have some bubble teams going into this. And look, and you never want to take opportunities away. And I think that's what we're hearing at the FBS level, right? Is more opportunities, not only in the college football playoff, but in our other NCAA events too. And schools are investing now, right? As we talk about, that investment is key. So should they be rewarded now that membership has grown on all fronts to have more opportunities? However, we got to be realistic in what the costs are associated with that, and that we're not taking away opportunities financially from doing certain things, right? We're flying teams across the country. Everyone knows what's happening with flights now, so we have to be creative this year as we get into that. And I know the NCAA staff and Ty Halpin are already diving deep on that. What's the solution there? But more importantly, ensuring that we don't lose anything from that current FCS experience. Well, how can we enhance it with expansion? And will that be, is that realistic? At the end of the day, for me, I would love, Jeff and I talk about all the time, how do we come up with a king of the South when it comes to football, right? What's that concept, knowing the strength? And is it a more regional concept that then will provide it? And it's tough because we do play each other in a regular season, so you don't want to double dip, but you see that at the FBS level, right? And it's happening in their conference championship and in the playoffs. So we just got to put all things on the table, and that kind of loops back to what I was saying with the vision, right? What is our vision collectively as all commissioners? Because I only speak for the Southland Conference, and there's a lot more experience in our room. Folks have been doing it at a much longer clip than Jeff and I, and we're fortunate that they allow us to sit at the table to be innovative and bring new ideas. But we definitely want to look at what opportunities are out there to enhance this experience for the student athletes.
Yeah, 24 is a pretty large field, so I think generally feel pretty good about where we're at. But like Chris said, if the opportunity to expand in a reasonable way that doesn't expand the calendar, that manages costs, but drives value and puts a few more deserving teams in that field, I think we'd always be willing to take a look at that, or interested in taking a look at that. And the more of that experience we can share with folks, the better, especially when FCS right now is so broadly competitive. There's going to be, a half a dozen schools or so probably left out of that tournament that deserve a shot, or at least that experience. But like Chris said, the opportunity inside or outside of the playoff to add postseason value for our schools. So whether that means doing something in the South together between the Southland and the United and maybe some others, providing a bowl game type of experience for folks is something that I think we've bounced around on a little bit. Maybe a postseason festival or a Southeastern facing tournament. of some sort. Like Chris said, now's the time to put everything out there on the table and figure out what works, figure out what helps, what drives value, and what creates opportunities and experiences for our schools. So whether that's expansion in the tournament field or some other way to create a unique elite experience for our schools, all things we should be talking about and are talking about.
Right. Yeah. And I say kudos. I mean, look, Dr. Charles McClellan, what he's done there in the SWAC, him and Commissioner Stills, like, it's amazing with the Celebration Bowl and their postseason experiences. And that's, we want to capitalize off using precedent for that. And what that experience looks like on national television, it brings much more exposure to all of our campuses. And hopefully that doubles down on enrollment, the president's goals, and we're doing our job.
Yeah.
My last question, guys, is there's been a lot of talk about money in the FCS playoffs, and you mentioned the Celebration Bowl, right? And you hear this a lot from SWAC commissioners and presidents: is why would we go to the playoffs when we can make $1 million going to the Celebration Bowl, and we might lose money going to the FCS playoffs? Now, obviously, there was a huge story this offseason, private equity maybe getting involved in the FCS playoffs. Outside of that, though, what are some other ways that you guys as commissioners have looked into making the FCS playoffs more financially, I would say, profitable for some of these universities that make deep playoff runs and are in the playoffs year in and year out?
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so that's what we're doing. I mean, look, you're peeling back the onion now. Again, we're going to need a whole nother podcast here, and maybe invite in some other folks, because it's exactly where we're sitting down. We met in Chicago at the Big Ten office a few months ago and had this exact discussion, right? And that's what I really started off with, talking about what is the vision for the future of FCS. We have to make it a revenue-generating event, similar to what March Madness is, right? It's not going to be at that clip, but the NCAA has shown that there is value to it. ESPN, ABC being a great partner of ours, as well as the sponsorships year over year to continue to increase. So how can we collectively as commissioners come to an agreement of what that new model looks like, so that our schools aren't losing money participating? And, and I think it's data out there from institutions that have been participating in national championships and deep runs in the playoffs that they aren't benefiting financially. And look, you should be rewarded for your investment, especially when you're having success. And that's a lot easier sell for us as commissioners on why our presidents should continue investing in such a great sport of football. And so we want to see the viability of football last, especially FCS. It's such a good brand, great brand of football, right? We're putting NFL student athletes are excelling there, as well as, going on to graduate and doing great things from each of our campuses. And it brings so much exposure week in and week out to all of our communities. And so how can we continue to look at different avenues and streams of revenue to enhance this, right? But currently doing it in partnership with the NCAA. And so we've now opened that, that box of or can of worms, and having those conversations. And, look, Jeff mentioned that's like, don't rush to that decision though, right? We don't want to do something that we can't put back into the tube. And so being mindful of that, again, we're here for the student athletes, and we have to be mindful and be good stewards of the game along the way.
And we have to look at it, right? Now's the time, or as good a time as any, at least, for us to be asking those types of questions and trying to understand how we maximize that value. So it doesn't necessarily have to be with a capital investment partner. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It could very well be just in continued partnership with the NCAA, and working together to find ways to draw out additional value opportunities there. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the most popular sport in the country. We're talking about leagues, at least such as ours, that occupy the most populated and football hungry part of the country.
Right.
And we're putting, 20,000 fans in our stadiums on Saturdays. So we know there's an appetite for it. We know that asset, that being the playoff, is valuable, and that there's a market for it. And we want to make sure, it's our responsibility, I think, as commissioners and representatives of our schools, to make sure that we're maximizing that value. And when you look at it on the surface and consider that our schools are going and participating in a playoff in the most popular sport in the country and losing, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, guys, to be really frank and direct about it. I mean, this is real money that's being lost to participate in what should be a highly monetized event,
right?
Really. And so we've got to figure out a better way to do that if it exists out there. And that's just part of that responsibility and that responsible conversation. Again, whether it's private equity, whether it's with the NCAA, whether it's Chris and I and some other commissioners sitting together trying to figure out other things that we can do.
Yeah. Did you say Stats Perform Bowl is coming
Yeah.
soon? I think I just heard that, right?
Sounds good here.
Next podcast.
Well, Chris Grant from the Southland, Jeff Bacon from the UAC. This was very insightful. We were fortunate to have you both together at the same time. We appreciate it. We thank you for joining us today.
Good. I'm glad we've proven commissioners can't sit in the same room and not duke it out, right? And come to some solutions. But glad to have Jeff here today in Frisco. And look, we would say hi to the rest of our peers and appreciate what everyone's doing for FCS football. And good luck in the last few weeks of an exciting season.
Yeah, same, fellas. Thanks for having us. Great to talk to you today.
Well, thank you. All right, we're going to take a break from the FCS Edge, and when we come back, Zach and I are going to have our Pick'em segment. This is the FCS Edge. Welcome back to the FCS Edge. Our third and final segment is our Pick'em segment. We're up to week 12, and what a wild month it's been already. Zach, our game of the week, wow, they've saved the best for last. It's UC Davis at Montana State in the Big Sky, 10:15 Eastern, Saturday night on, is it ESPN2?
Yes, I believe so.
ESPN2. I mean, that's just a great matchup. They met late last year. It wound up being a close game in the end. Who do you like here?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Montana State here. At home, you have a redshirt freshman quarterback, Caden Pennick, on the road in a very hostile environment. Even though he's played really well, the one concern a little bit for me, Craig, is injuries starting to kind of pile up for UC Davis here, and Montana State is playing arguably, Craig, and I know North Dakota State's been really good. Montana State has an argument that they're playing the best football in the country right now. The rushing attacks going. Lampson just continues to grow into this role at quarterback. And that defense, Craig, this might be the best Montana State defense that I personally remember watching in a very, very long time. They are playing elite football right now. So I like Montana State here at home to get the win.
I like the Bobcats as well. I mean, you mentioned how strong they're playing. In conference play, they are so far out of the rest of the country in point differential. The points they've given up or scored versus the points they've given up, 294 to 65. They're plus 229. It's not even close with the rest of the conference. The injuries are a factor for UC Davis. Caden Pennick, he's still playing very well for a redshirt freshman. The one thing that is happening, though, UC Davis is starting to turn the ball over a little too much. I think it was 5 turnovers in the first 6 games, 6 turnovers in the last 3. So I think that's something they cannot afford when you're facing a phenomenal rushing attack in Montana State. So I'll go with them. All right. Southland Conference. We just had on Commissioner Grant. He has another big game. Stephen F. Austin is hosting Lamar. Lamar coming off that huge win over Southeastern Louisiana. I like Stephen F. Austin here. Who do you like?
Yeah, I do too, but I don't feel confident about it. Every time I pick against Lamar, they find another way to win. It just makes me nervous here that they have achieved winning close games over and over again. And I thought what they did last weekend against Southeastern Louisiana was unbelievable. But I think Stephen F. Austin's the most complete team in the South, and that defense is playing so well right now. And you talk about point differential. They have been dominant recently since that early loss to Abilene Christian. I also like Stephen F. Austin to get it done this weekend.
And Stephen Austin can clinch the auto bid here with the win. I like their offensive weapons. We've talked Sam Vidlak a lot behind center, but Jarrell Wimbley, the running back, Kylan Harris, the wide receiver. I mean, they've been there forever, racking up yards. I just think they have enough to just get by Lamar, who's just been phenomenal in close games. All right, let's stay in the Southland Conference. UIW, the preseason favorite, is trying to play spoiler, and they're hosting Southeastern Louisiana. I'm going to stick with Southeastern Louisiana only because I feel like teams getting close to the playoffs can see the end of see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I say they finish it off here, but this is a tough one going to San Antonio.
Yeah, I'm gonna go upset here. I was one of the people that kind of wrote UIW off, but I think they've been playing their best football recently. Knocked off Lamar 2 weeks ago. I think they caused a little bit of chaos, man. I do want to say, man, I think Kilo deserves a shout out, Craig, because when you bring in such a large transfer portal class and it goes the way that it did, a lot of those guys can quit on the program, can quit on the season, and you just see it all fall apart. And it looked like it was trending in that direction. They've really turned it around. They've been getting healthier since Jalen Walthall's been back, Craig. He has been just going insane. I want to say he's had 200-yard game like 2 of the past 3 weeks or something like that. I think they get it done offensively because their defense has been playing well all season long outside of like 1 or 2 games. I think UIW pulls off the upset at home.
That's a good pick. I certainly worry about getting that one right with picking the Lions. So, all right, here's another team that's finishing strong. Maine. They're hosting Rhode Island here in the CAA. Maine is 5-1 in conference. You know, nobody's paying attention to them up in Orono, Maine, the northernmost school in the FCS, but they are getting it done. They have the terrific running backs, the black hole defense that they've always been strong. They were national semifinalists back in 2018. So I'm going to go with Rhodey here getting it done because, again, I think they could see the finish line, but this is certainly an upset waiting to happen.
Yeah, what a season for Maine. Who would have ever I don't think anybody really saw this coming to this level, right? But yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to go Rhode Island. I think when you look at the offense and what they've been able to do with Marquise Buchanan, with Devin Farrell there at quarterback, it's kind of all gelling. And then on the defensive side, AJ Pena, they have Johnson there at corner, 2 interceptions, 10 pass breakups. I just think they got too much talent. And Rhodey's rolling. And Craig, with Monmouth lost last week, Rhodey's in the driver's seat right now to get that auto bid for the CAA. I think they, like you said, I think they see the finish line and they find a way to get it done.
All right, let's go to the Missouri Valley Conference. South Dakota State, 7-3. I tell you, one of the biggest storylines of the season is this 3-game losing streak. I mean, they're just a national championship level program all the time. They're hosting Illinois State, who's ranked above them. It's 14-16. It's senior day for the Jackrabbits. I think that factors in here. They might rally the defense, rally the troops. I'll go with the Jackrabbits, but boy, this is just a fascinating storyline as we talked about earlier, especially with that game at North Dakota coming up.
I'm going to not confidently pick the Jags. I'll be honest. If there was a way for me to get a hands on an injury report, if Chase Mason doesn't play, I don't think they win. I'm just going to put that out there, but I'm still going to go the Jags because Craig, it's time. Like if he's above 50%, we got to do something. And I think defensively, they're starting to get a little bit healthier. I believe was it Jalen Lee came back last week for the game. He's been banged up. I don't think Van Tol's going to be back yet, but they're getting a few other handful of pieces back. I think South Dakota State gets it done at home because they're desperate. But I would be very worried if they're still missing a ton of pieces, man. Because Illinois State has been playing pretty well over the past 2-3 weeks.
And Illinois State's gotten healthier, unlike South Dakota
Yes.
State. So we'll see in that one. But let's stay in the Missouri Valley Conference. South Dakota just on fire now as we head towards the finish line. 7-4 at Southern Illinois, who needs this game in the worst way. They're 6-4, and one of those losses doesn't help them, or one of those wins, St. Thomas More, doesn't count towards their playoff resume. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna go USD. I'll be honest. So this one was tough because my head's telling me SIU because I don't know if it's a great matchup for USD, but my gut's saying this USD team is so hot right now. LJ Phillips, what he's done on the ground has been so impressive. Aiden Bauman's playing better. And you want to talk about a team not quitting, Craig. How about South Dakota just finding a way to turn this season around year one under Johansson? I think South Dakota gets it done on the road and probably solidifies their spot in the postseason.
Yeah, the kryptonite for Southern Illinois is just that rush defense has not been holding up. I think you have to pick the Coyotes just because of LJ Phillips, how hot he's been running the ball. So I'll go with USD as well. Let's go to the Pioneer League. When we talked favorite races of a month or so ago, I said the Pioneer League. It's crazy. Drake loses their first game and still remain in first place because Presbyterian loses to a winless conference team in Davidson last week, 1-8 overall. So it's a fascinating scenario. They are at Dayton, who's one of 4 2-loss teams in the league. It'll be crazy if Drake doesn't get it done here. I'm going to go with them just because they have the experience as the 2-time defending champs.
Yeah, give me Drake. They were my pick to win the Pioneer preseason. I'm sticking with it till I'm wrong, so give me Drake to win.
All right, let's go to the Ivy League. We've talked a lot of Harvard today. They're 8-0, hosting Penn, who's taken a little bit of step back. They're 5-3, but obviously, just a class program in the Ivy League history. I'll go with Harvard. I mean, they're still leading the nation in scoring defense, just a little bit over the Bison. So I'll go with Harvard at home.
Yeah, their defense has been playing so well. I'm also going with Harvard. Jaden Craig's been great. Their rushing attack has gotten better and better and better every single week, Craig. And Penn's trending a little bit in the wrong direction. They haven't played their best football recently, so I think Harvard wins this one. Think they do it convincingly.
Well, we talked about Stephen F. Austin can win and get into the field auto bid. We mentioned Central Connecticut State at Duquesne. Last year, it came down to the final week. The winner moved on and was Central Connecticut State. This time, Central Connecticut State can just move into the field with a win here, but they still have the safety of winning next week to win the auto bid. Who do you like, Central Connecticut State at Duquesne?
Yeah, I'm going to go Central Connecticut State. Elijah Howard, Jaden Turner, that rushing attack has been really, really good. And also too, their defense again has still been good, and they lost a few key contributors from that defense this offseason, Craig. But you look at what they've been able to do. Jalen Howard getting after the quarterback, 13 tackles for loss. So I'm going to go with Central Connecticut State here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Duquesne, back-to-back losses. They had a bye week in there. They just, it's been a while since they won. They're just going in the wrong direction. I feel like this is a game Duquesne can't fall behind. Otherwise, Central Connecticut State will see the finish line of a playoff bid. So I'll go with the Blue Devils as well. All right, final game here. In the MEAC, South Carolina State at North Carolina Central. Going into the year, this would have been the game of the year in the league. Right now, it could wind up being Delaware State hosting South Carolina State, the defending champion, because Delaware State did beat North Carolina Central. I'm going to go with South Carolina State on the road. Their quarterback play has been tremendous, but this is certainly a dangerous game. I mean, it's hard to pick against the Eagles at home, but I think I will.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Trey Oliver and the Eagles to get it done. Pull off maybe the upset, I guess you would say. I think Walker Harris has been playing pretty well. Chris Mosley on the ground, and also this team has always one slip up, Craig, in Crawford's play. They've had it already. They slipped up against Delaware State. I think they caused a little bit of chaos and really put Delaware State in the hot seat now. Because now if Delaware State loses a game in conference and there's a possible 3-way tie, Central wins that tiebreaker between Del State's South Carolina State and themselves. So they still have a shot here. I think they need this one. They're desperate there at home. Give me Trey Oliver and Central to get it done.
You said chaos. I think that's the theme of the week. It always is at this point of the year. What are you looking forward to the most, Zach?
Man, just more clarity on this playoff picture. I think there's a ton of games this weekend that are going to have an impact one way or another on not just auto bid races, but the bubble picture. And at the end of the day, man, we talked about it earlier this year. What makes the FCS so special are these conference races, these rivalry games, and we get a bunch to end the season, right? Like even next week going into it, Yale, Harvard, Lafayette, Lehigh, like these are the games late in the season that really define what makes the FCS so great. And I just can't wait to watch it all.
It's going to be tremendous this week. Week 12 of the FCS regular season. The playoff pairings will be out on November 23rd, fast approaching. Tighten those seatbelts. We know Graham Bell, our producer, has already done that because this is just a wild experience of a season in the FCS. We thank Graham. We thank all our listeners and viewers here on the FCS Edge. And we'll be back next week to put it all together again. This is the FCS Edge. We will see you soon.